All right, let's look at the, I just want to talk about those scriptures. Let's look at the archaeological evidences. Can Jordan do this? Let's just go through it randomly.
He said randomly, so just pick one.
Just go in order as it is there.
Just
Pick one.
Yes.
Yeah, he'll go off what you do.
All right, this is the oldest portion of scripture yet discovered by archaeologists. And this was like an amulet. What it is a silver piece
scroll.
Yeah, that is the Aaronic benediction.
Nice.
This is from 700
Nice.
BC. So that's the oldest scripture verse ever discovered. So what somebody took a small piece of silver and they wrote the Aaronic benediction in it, and they rolled it up and they put it in a necklace.
And that's sold
Nice.
as jewelry now. And that came, those came with the papyrus that we have
Yeah, but
of this
There's a cave they found this probably a tomb, maybe that somebody's buried with this jewelry on, but that is the Aaronic benediction. You can see Paleo Hebrew, you can see the equivalent of Hebrew, but this is the Aaronic benediction. So this is before the Temple of Solomon was still standing when this tiny scroll was made, right, and inscribed. So this is the oldest Bible verse yet discovered. You know, we've lost so much, especially when you have paper, because paper doesn't, you know, in certain isolated cases, but a lot of times that just crumbles away. So this is made out of silver, and it was jewelry, and so that has survived. This is the oldest Bible verse, and it's the Aaronic benediction. All right, let's go to the next one.
Okay, pick another one.
I believe this is the oldest piece of the New Testament we have. This is from the year 125. I think this is called the John Rylands Papyrus. So,
If this is the oldest we have, again, this is, as you know, I believe that most of the New Testament was actually written in Hebrew. That's greatly
Right.
debated. If this is the oldest we have, how can we prove otherwise? Just by that.
just what's been discovered so far. This is the Gospel of John. Let's say John was written around 90 AD. This is from 125, give or take. So
That's
this
not
is
bad.
35, less than 35 years or so since it was originally written, right? And this is the verse where Pilate says, "What is truth?" So this is the oldest piece of version or fragment of New Testament scroll yet discovered. It's actually a codex, right? Codex. So what happened is they used scrolls, but early Christians would start, folding the paper together. It was Christians that popularized that form, the booklets, which is called a codex, or codices. So this is how this was written, but this is the front and back of a page of the Gospel of John. So that's a very important manuscript discovery. Let's go on to the next. Okay, this is the King Misha tablet. This also has the name of Yahweh on it. And this is in the book of Kings. And the language here is a Semitic language, very, very close to Hebrew. So what happened in the Bible, it talks about King Misha of Moab, right? And King Misha is an enemy king. He's a servant of Chemosh, the evil god they worship. Of course, Moab and Ammon are the two sons of who? Lot.
Yes, sir.
Abraham's nephew Lot. And this is
Moabite.
the Moabites are where Ruth came from. So
His sons, grandsons?
Right.
Sons/grandsons?
yeah, that's true, isn't it? It's perverse, but after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, for whatever reason, maybe these women were corrupted, or maybe they thought that they were the last human survivors. They needed to perpetuate the species, but they made him drunk. He didn't even remember what happened. So anyway, this is King Misha, and in the Bible it talks about the war between Israel and the Moabites, led by King Misha. And what happened is the prophet appeared and said Misha would be defeated, and the Bible tells the whole story. But this is kind of an awful thing, where they had defeated Misha, and he's holed up in his capital. And what he did was he sacrifices on the city walls. He sacrificed his son. his firstborn son, and people were so appalled that they fled. But that's the story the Bible tells. And what happened is Misha made this column. I am Misha, the great king, the servant of the god Chemosh, and I'm the enemy of the people of Yahweh, blah, blah, blah. So this is an important, it's the Bible story told from the perspective of the enemy's side, right? So this is kind of unfortunate. But what happened was archaeologists discovered this like in the 1800s. And Muslims don't believe, at that time especially, now they've changed, but Muslims believed that anything before the Quran didn't matter, right? That was the period of Jahiliyyah, or ignorance. And they would destroy things. When the Muslim Brotherhood took over Egypt, they tried to do this for centuries since the Muslims got in Egypt. They're talking about tearing down, leveling the pyramids. That's this mentality we have.
That's a good job.
When European archaeologists were excavating like Nineveh, they didn't understand it. They thought they're trying to find gold because it has no value to them. It's just garbage. Yep. Even the Gospels, it's like, oh well, Jesus is a prophet, but Muhammad's a greater prophet than Jesus. What do we need? We don't need anything that we need to know about God is in the Quran. Everything else is superfluous and should be just destroyed.
Isa.
That's their idea.
Yes, sir.
Right? So what happened is archaeologists and pastors traveling over there, they saw this, they could read the that's kind of Paleo-Hebrew, it's actually the Moabite dialect of Hebrew, or Canaanite. And they realized it's like, well, this is important. This is an attestation, an independent attestation that the Bible's true, that this really happened, that King Misha actually lived. This is his account of this Bible story. So thank God somebody made a rubbing, but then the Arabs could not understand. It's like, what do they want this old rock for? And it's like, maybe there's gold inside of it, right?
Oh, no.
Or maybe we could break it apart and we could sell money. They're really curious about this rock.
Sell it by the piece. Yeah.
So what they did was they got it hot and they poured cold water over it and they busted it into pieces. And then so the archaeologists, the pastors come to look for it again. It's like, hey, this is important. This says that this shows that this story of the Bible actually happened. This is a witness, a participant, that even though it's the bad guy, this is important. This shows the Bible is not a collection of myths and fairy tales. It really happened. So they go back and ask, where did the monument go? You want a piece of it? It's like, so at exorbitant prices, they're able to buy that. But some pieces were totally lost, and a pastor made a rubbing of it. If it wasn't for that, we would have lost this text.
This is not a photograph?
No,
The part on the left is pieced back together, but it's not all of it.
This is real, and the pastor made a rubbing.
What is that, Mom?
So some of the pieces were not recovered. So this is the danger of the Islamic mentality, right?
Or any mentality that wants to destroy statues.
Well, it's the same as the Mormon religion,
It's the same
believing
spirit,
that
that's right.
that the more recent word is the more accurate.
One thing that I remember when I don't know, I majored in history. I think history is important. When the Taliban destroyed the Buddhists in Afghanistan, it's like, this is a danger to us, because you know how fanatical they were in Afghanistan? They were destroying chess pieces. Chess pieces. Oh, that's a statue. Statues are easy. That's a knight or a rook. I was like, oh, we gotta destroy chess pieces.
No music, no...
Yeah, they were arresting people for having Leonardo DiCaprio hairstyle and stuff like that. It's like, this level of insanity is not going to stay in Afghanistan. It's dangerous, and we're all in danger by this lunacy. And just a few weeks, because they're not satisfied. They have to destroy. They destroy the Buddhas. They destroy the chess pieces. They have to destroy. That's all they can do. They don't know how to create.
Like 1984.
So they destroyed, they attacked us. So this is an important archaeology. It has the name of Yahweh on it. Probably one of the oldest inscriptions. There's an older inscription we'll look at. But one of the oldest inscriptions, the name Yahweh. And also, I think it mentions David in it as well. But what happened was, the rubbing wasn't perfect, and so much of it, it looks like a third of the column was destroyed by these maniac Muslims. But this is a very important biblical artifact. Let's go to the next one. What is this? Is this 4? Well, we'll go through all of them, and we'll conclude. Okay, this is important because, what's his name? This is the Assyrian king Shashbazzar, I believe. So this that is King Jehu bowing down before the Assyrian king, and then you have Israelite. And so King Jehu is like the only godly king in northern Israel, right? And in southern Israel, you had a lot of wicked kings too, but you had, Asa served the Lord, Hezekiah served the Lord, Josiah served the Lord.
There were a few.
They're godly kings. Up in the north, King Jehu, and he did something. The Lord was displeased with for two things he did. He was zealous for Yahweh. He repressed he fought against Jezebel. He had her executed, and he established the worship of Yahweh in northern and what's his name? The guy with the Jonathan Cahn. Jonathan Cahn wrote about this in his book about Jehu being he thinks Donald Trump was like Jehu. And I was like,
Oh yeah.
right? Because he's kind of a crazy guy. He's not anybody.
How he drove crazy on his chariot.
So, but God used Jehu, and Jehu brought a revival that spared his hand of judgment, right? So what did Jehu? We know Jehu was a fanatical servant of Yahweh. He promoted the worship of Yahweh. He executed Jezebel. He deposed and repressed the worship of the pagan gods and idols of Baal. So what was his failures? First off, he slaughtered Ahab's sons, apparently even children. And Hosea says that displeased the Lord. The Lord does not like excessive bloodshed. David, you're not going to build my temple because you're a man of blood. Even though he's a godly king, I have something against you, Jehu. Even though you did good things, you slaughtered those children, and you shouldn't have done that. So what else did he do? He promoted Yahweh's worship, but he was scared to take down, even though he didn't participate in it. You had the golden calf, right?
Compromise.
What was it about the golden calf? Oh, that's a statue of El. It's Elohim. That's what that represents. And he wasn't participating in that. It's like, oh my goodness, if I take down that, there might be a revolt. So he was scared to take down the golden calves, and he slaughtered Ahab's sons. But other than that, he was the only righteous or godly king of the north. Those are serious things, Lord. But he did good. God used him, and he promoted the worship of Yahweh, despite his flaws. But this is King Jehu, submitting to the Assyrian king. So that's actually a depiction of an Israelite king, Jehu. Of course, his name, it basically means of Yahweh. So he's got Yahweh in it, a Yahwistic name. And I think it says Jehu, the son of Omri. Of course, he wasn't the son of Omri. Ahab was the son of Omri, but Omri was such a...
Heritage.
Yeah, well, Omri was such a powerful king that they called the kingdom, they called Israel the kingdom of Omri sometimes, but this is a contemporary depiction of an Israelite king, of Jehu, the only godly king of the north. So that's
It looks like cuneiform around it.
That is cuneiform. That's the language is Akkadian, which is the language of the Assyrians and Babylonians. That's one of the oldest forms of writing devised by mankind, wedge-shaped or cones, cuneiform, because they're shaped like cones.
Triangles, yeah.
Triangles, because that's just actually, probably what happened is that the Sumerians and the people of Mesopotamia invented this script, and an Egyptian went and he told a pharaoh, it's like, hey, they have this concept of you make symbols for words. It's called writing. And so the Egyptians quickly developed their hieroglyphs inspired by cuneiform. They had a totally different system. But this is the first form of...
Those triangles would be easy to chisel.
It's probably and Userit.
In what clay was a pointed stick?
Yeah.
And they actually developed, because hieroglyphs are not alphabetic.
No.
What happened is Semitic people in Egypt realized, why do we have 2,000 hieroglyphs? we only need 22. Just get rid of it. Because the scribe is a form of power, right? If you make it difficult to read, you can hold all the power to yourself.
Secrecy,
Right? So Semitic people in Egypt developed, it's like, just get rid of all these symbols and just keep 20, and that's the first alphabet. And an alphabet was developed out of cuneiform. There's a cuneiform alphabet used in Ugarit. Ugarit is a form of Hebrew as well. But the Ugaritic kingdom was destroyed, and so that alphabet never came to anything. But our alphabet is derived from Egyptian hieroglyphs. That alphabet was created by Semitic people in Egypt. So this is actually a contemporary depiction. So what we see a writing by one of the enemies of Israel, his own writing, mentioning the name Yahweh, mentioning the people of Israel, and we see this depiction of King Jehu. So let's go to the next one. So these are all very, very important archaeological discoveries. So I thought we'd break our
Very nice. Oh, you done great use of the
cameras in.
screens.
Let's go to the next one.
Next.
Shabbat Shalom. You need to hurry up and go through them. Okay, this is very significant. This is Caiaphas's bone box.
Ossuary.
His ossuary. Caiaphas's bones were in it. It says in Aramaic, Joseph's the son of Joseph ben Caiaphas. So, very elaborate. This is the high priest. So you think about that. The skull.
Very fancy.
The rabbis stole it. We're going to give these stones a proper burial. But the bones of the high priest who condemned Jesus to death was in this box. That's what it says in Aramaic in the side. So I don't even know if there's the bones were in there when they found it. I don't know if they what became all these rabbinical groups.
Sacrilege.
Yeah, sacrilege. We don't want anybody to
Desecration.
see them. But his bones so just think, that skull there, and those empty eye sockets looked at Jesus, right? So that's it's an ossuary. So what would happen in the time of Yeshua, the time of Jesus? You'd have a family, or some people are buried in just like we do now, just buried in the ground. But most people, you'd have a family burial tomb. It's a cave. And you'd have shelves in the cave. What would happen is you'd lay the body and rest in a shelf inside the cave. And then you'd go, what's that?
Cave doesn't necessarily mean naturally forming cave.
Right.
If you're
Tomb.
digging
Carved tomb.
you're digging a mausoleum into the side of a hill.
Right.
Like
Sometimes
Jesus-
they're naturally occurring. They had
Right.
this-
Sometimes naturally, sometimes not.
Right, they had this huge cave system, Bet Shemerim. When I was doing archaeological work, I went and visited it, and it was like the rabbinic tombs. There's like rabbis buried over there for centuries. But as you said, they would create. I mean, like the flat round stone. That's not a natural formation. Sometimes, if a cave was there, the cave was there already. That'd be you could use it. But sometimes they would carve the caves out for family tombs, and you'd have a shelf. Say, your grandfather died, you lay him there. You come back 3 years later, and the body would be you'd just be bones. So they take the bones, they put them in these boxes, and you put them in the back of the family tomb. So this is Caiaphas. You can see the reason why it's so elaborate is because he's the high priest.
I think they even would clean the bones.
I saw some kind of a documentary where they think they found a box with
Jesus.
Jesus'
Yeah.
bones in it.
They tried to claim it. They
Right.
claimed they found the Jesus son of Joseph box.
James, the brother of James. Well, it could be real. It's just they argue about it. So I didn't.
And they're
include it.
common names too.
Yeah, it says James, the son of Joseph, the brother of Jesus.
Yeah.
That was an ossuary that was discovered a few years ago. It's like scholarly opinion seems to be divided. Half of it say it's real, and half of it say it's fake.
And half of them are out to disprove the Bible, if not most of them.
Right. So let's go to the next one.
Shabbat shalom.
Yeah, next one's Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
It's not finding.
Hold on, it's having difficulty.
Next.
Not giving me the option.
Thanks.
So that's these are all very impressive discoveries, that were
Just
made.
double click that one, bring it in as a.
Yeah, it should be like a slideshow you can do.
Yeah, well, he didn't.
I should have put it up here. I don't know if I'd let Joseph. So should have this new system. It's not gonna.
It's a new system.
We're gonna have
Yeah.
to bring that one in. We were trying not to use the
All right,
slideshow
all right.
because it
This
brings
is-
up
this is
so much
important.
extra.
This is the Cyrus cylinder. They actually had. This is kind of small. You can hold this in your hand. The last verse of Ezra, the first book of Chronicles. What happens is King Cyrus allowed the Israelites that Jeremiah said, because of your sins you're going to be held in captivity for 70 years in Babylonia. Then King Cyrus the Persian destroys the Babylonian Empire, and he issued an edict that all the exiles and refugees can return to their home country, and that's what this is.
And that is cuneiform.
Yeah, that's cuneiform as well. And they had a traveling exhibition, and this was in Houston. I actually got to see it here in Houston. But it's you can hold it probably in your hands. It's not a massive thing. But I've seen this in real life. I also saw King Jehu. I believe that's in the British Museum. I saw that in real life too. The British Museum has all kinds of biblical artifacts on public display. Let's go to the next one. All right, there's the Arch of Titus menorahs. That's what we're trying to reconstruct. There's the table of shewbread. See, this is kind of amazing, is that when you look at ancient artifacts, you need to realize that everything was painted. It's just the paint is washed off or weathered away. And so they take these high-tech, microscopes where they found that there is paint residue on the Arch of Titus. They're able to reconstruct with the paint what it was originally like. And there's the table of shewbread, there's the silver trumpets, and there's the menorah. And this menorah, which we're trying to reproduce, is created by, and Dad used this, it's like how big were people? People a little bit shorter, but much the same size for the most part, even though they were slightly shorter back then. There were tall people, like Abraham Lincoln was 6'3" tall back in the 1800s. Most people were much shorter than we are today, but people were tall back then as well. So roughly, this will give you an idea how big the menorah was. This is a reproduction created by eyewitnesses, and that's why we're going to build our menorah to look like that, because this is an authentic, contemporary. Once again, this is contemporary, right? Cyrus issued that edict. The king of Assyrian had that depiction of the Israelite king made. Mesha had that monument made. People mention the Bible, or Jesus said the temple was going to be destroyed, and it was. And Romans created this monument celebrating this event that's prophesied by Yeshua. Let's go to the next one. Next one.
Sorry.
This is an engraving showing the Arch of Titus. You can look that up yourself in Rome. But that's a very significant biblical archaeological discovery. All right, let's go to the next one. This is, by the way, the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is the important this is the Book of Enoch, as we're talking about. It was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Hundreds of scrolls, thousands of fragments of biblical books and extra biblical books, and books that are part of the Bible that we don't use today, like Tobit and Enoch. I mean, they were part of the Bible back then, and they found several manuscripts. Almost every book of the Bible, except the book of Esther, was...
Is Jasher there?
No. No, that's one of the questions I have about Jasher. I haven't seen an ancient manuscript before the year 500 of Jasher. But this is one of the Dead Sea Scrolls. What are the Dead Sea Scrolls? They don't know for sure. They think there's like a monastic community of Jewish people. They think it was the Essenes had a monastery where they had a scriptorium and they had collections of biblical texts. Some people think this is actually a remnant of the temple library. That when Rome was attacking Jerusalem, they hid the library in Qumran. We don't know. There's a lot of what's called sectarian documents, which this religious community, which call themselves the Yahad, there's like their rules for their religious order. So some people think
they thought the current high priest was illegitimate.
Yes, that's what it seems to be. A lot of the text
was illegitimate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he was. Yes.
So what had happened? What happened? The majority of the theory is that there's a sect of Judaism that was disgusted by the corruption of the high priest. They had their own unique views, so they started their own community outside the Dead Sea, and they had scribes there, and they produced this library. And what gives that theory credence is, like I said, the sectarian documents, like the Damascus document, describes this community, it's their rules, their order, and stuff like that.
Look at how that's a remnant. Look at most of the nation went with the fake high priest, and they separated.
Right. But we have, like I said, every book of the Bible represented except for Esther, and books that we don't use too much, but were part of the Bible back then. There's still parts of the Bible in other communities like Enoch and Tobit. There's so many manuscripts of Enoch and Tobit. They said this community used these two books as part of the Bible. But what is it? This is a library including sectarian documents, biblical commentaries, apocryphal texts, the entire Bible except for Esther. But you can get a Dead Sea Scroll Bible. It's not complete because the scroll of like Nehemiah, the first pages are there, the second page, the last pages are there, and the middle rotted out, right?
So they omit
There's
what's
also
that.
the fact that
Right. Some of it, even though the whole Bible is represented, some parts decayed or were damaged that are
And
recoverable.
they're not gonna make it up.
Yeah. So we know that they had that whole book, but not the entire. So anyway, yeah, that's an example. But this isn't this. The book of the Great Isaiah Scroll is in great state of preservation, but the book of Enoch isn't complete. There are stories that there's a Dead Sea Scroll, the book of Enoch, that's still being hidden out there. But anyway, what are the Dead Sea Scrolls? It's a library including the Bible, extra biblical books, and sectarian literature, dated from 200 BC to 70 AD. And this is one of the most important biblical manuscript discoveries ever made. Let's go to the next slide. Picture. All right, that's King Jehu again. You can see his entourage of Israelites, his servants, and royal entourage with them. That's the artifact, which is in the British Museum. That's why I've seen this with my own eyes.
That symbol over in,
It's probably a symbol of Shamash, the pagan.
yeah.
Shamash is the sun
No,
god.
the other one.
Or,
Like
or,
the phoenix or something?
Yes.
or they worship, the Assyrians worship Ashur. So that's probably a symbol.
That looks
that-
an awful lot like some of the Nazi.
Yes.
And I wonder whether, I know he took it from
Yeah,
a
the
lot of
Nazi eagle.
paganism.
Maybe. All right, so that's the King Jehu. Let's go to the next one. We're almost. We've got to do the Lord's Supper and conclude.
Yeah.
Kay's got to hit the road. All right, this is Hezekiah built a tunnel. The Assyrians were coming to attack him, so he needed to have, we're going to fortify the city. We have to withstand the siege, right? So you have to make sure that the city has plenty of water so we can withstand the siege. So Hezekiah had a canal built. So
Isn't it a tunnel?
yeah, the tunnel, Hezekiah's tunnel. Let's go to the next one.
You have 9 more slides.
All right, let's go through this. This is Israel and Egyptian hieroglyphs. Let's go to the next one. I'm going to finish up real quick. This is the Tel Dan inscription. Mentions, this is kind of funny. There's this guy called John Romer, and he put a series on PBS about the Bible. He called it Testament. And while he was giving this talk, he said, I was joking with Yael Yadin. It's like, hey, you discovered the proof that King David existed. Ha 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 ha. David's legend and myth. And then a year after or so, after that miniseries was made, whatever you want to call it, the documentary, they found the Tel Dan inscription that has the name of David on it. So let God be true and every man alive. He's scoffing at the idea that proof of David's existence would ever be found, and yet, just a couple of years later it was. This is the Tel Dan. It's an Aramaic inscription mentioning David. Let's go to the next one. This is Paleo-Hebrew. This is Hezekiah. What happened is Hezekiah had this tunnel built, and the two workmen, they're digging at different sides, and they met in the middle, and they wrote on the wall, this is how we finished the tunnel. We could hear each other's voices. We could hear them, the pickaxes, and we broke through. We wrote this on the wall to, memorialize the digging of Hezekiah's tunnel. Yes. So let's go to the next one. Okay, this is Merneptah's. So this is the son of Ramses the Great, and he mentions that he defeated all these kingdoms, including the kingdom of Israel. This is the only Egyptian artifact that mentions Israel. It's like with the last sentence, he goes, Israel is destroyed, his seed is no more. So this is an important artifact, probably erected shortly after the Exodus. Let's go to the next slide. Be done. So there it is, the Israel stela of Merneptah. And it mentions Israel on the very bottom. This is the only Egyptian that clearly shows the name of Israel and mentions it. And I believe that this was erected shortly after the Exodus. This monument was made mentioning Israel. So, Merneptah may be the Pharaoh of the Exodus. And I went to one of the Egyptian museums, and I saw his mummy. The mummy of Ramses the Great and the mummy of Merneptah, the man who made the Israel monument here, have both been preserved. And Ramses' hair, you got the father and son resemblance. Ramses his hair is on his mummy, and he's a redhead. So let's go to the next one. I want to finish up.
Ramses is not the right one.
I'm pressing right. It's not moving.
There's the icon.
There.
So that's the Tel Dan inscription mentioning David. Tel Dan inscription mentions all these kings mentioned in the Bible. It mentions Hazael, Ben-Hadad, Ahab, Joram, Ahaziah, Jehoram, David, and Jehu. So,
If I realize this.
all right, next slide. So this is a very important artifact. Next. That's the monument we looked at already, the King Hezekiah's tunnel inscription, which is now in Constantinople, by the way, or Istanbul. I mean. Next slide. All right, this is the inscription, the oldest inscription bearing the name Yahweh. This is actually in Sudan, the Temple of Soleb. Let's go to the next slide. Last one. All right, this is from the 1440s, I believe. So this says, So what's going on in this monument is Pharaoh's boasting of all the people he defeated. And he says, I have defeated the Sheshu, or the Bedouins or the nomads of Yahweh. So this is YHWW. That's how they spell Yahweh in Egyptian hieroglyphs. And this is the oldest inscription bearing the name Yahweh. I defeated the Yahweh, the tribes of Yahweh. It's probably referring to not the Israelites, but the Kenites. But, we don't know 100% for sure. Some people do believe this is mentioning the Israelites, but majority opinion is it's the Kenites and the people of Jethro that this is referring to. So that's it. I think it's very interesting. Sorry, I went all the...
You said very good.
And you could probably come up with 90 more discoveries like this. But I think these are very, very significant discoveries. So,
Screens look fantastic.
yeah.
Yes.
So I thought we'd break it in with top 10 archaeological proofs of the historical reliability of the Bible.
Very nice.
Look at, we're talking about the Book of Mormon. Concocted by Joseph Smith. Is there any proof that that really happened? No.
No.
Right? The Bible. And like I said, these things are written by, let's say this is Jethro's people. Pharaoh himself and the people of Yahweh out in the desert, probably around Sinai. This is contemporary. That is Joseph Caiaphas's, his bones are in that box, right? This is a monument erected by King Mesha. This is, contemporary. These are ancient artifacts, contemporary biblical events describing events mentioned in the Bible and showing that these are things that actually happened. They're part of the historical record. Like I said, there are some things that archaeologists has not clarified. Like, I think that Merinptah is the pharaoh of the Exodus. Jonathan might disagree. I mean, I have reasons for my opinion, but do I know for a certitude? No. Maybe Jonathan's right. Until we have more discoveries made to clarify it better. But it is significant that Merinptah mentions Israel, right? And this was 1200 BC. All right, so this is important. So what does this mean? Let God be true and every man a liar. Like I said, I kind of enjoy John Romer's documentary series, Testament. But in the end, it's like, I was talking to Yigal Yaden, have you discovered, because Yigal Yaden was an important Israeli archaeologist. Have you discovered proof that David existed? He's laughing about it. He's scoffing at it, right? And then, like I said, a few years later, they proved that, we have this monument. And actually, they dig up a stone mentioning King David. Something he thought that they would never discover. They did. So as we're saying, the stones are crying out in the archaeological record. There are some questions, and like I say, every question's settled yet. But a lot of the Bible has been proved through archaeological discoveries, and I think this is very significant. I remember one time my brother Paul was in California, and he had this friend. It's like, how do you prove the Bible's really accurate? So I went to visit him. I had a pamphlet. It was like full color and kind of laminated. You can fold it out. And it had these discoveries and several more. He didn't want to look at it, though. He wasn't really interested because it was an excuse.
It doesn't go with his agenda.
Right.
His worldview.
Right.
Because of the skewing of the dates, and the misunderstanding of how the lineages of the pharaohs went and such, and the dates being off by like 500 years, there are so many things that archaeologists said, see, this can't possibly be scriptural because, and the only reason they ever gave was because it wasn't at the right time.
Right.
And when you put the time back in, all of a sudden there are tons more archaeological proofs of scripture.
I went to Egypt. I need to do this. I have all this. I want to do my own documentary on it. Now, was it Timothy Mulhaney did Patterns of Evidence? You want to watch that? It's very interesting. We promoted his theory. But Josiah and I went to Egypt, and I got all kinds of footage that I need to put together to talk about archaeology and the Exodus. All right, let's get into the Lord's Supper now, because we've gone on a little bit, 5 minutes over, and Kay's got to hit the road. So let's.
Actually, that's pretty good for us.
Yeah, well, usually I try to finish up on time. I like to go over too long.